2024 meeting of the Greensboro City Council. We are in the Katie Dorset Council Chamber. Let the record reflect that all members are in attendance. We will begin tonight's meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. Dr. Wells, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please silence all electronic devices. If you must make or receive a phone call, kindly do so from outside the council chamber. The Greensboro City Council welcomes resident input. It is important for all attendees to feel that the Katie Dorset Council Chamber is a welcoming and safe space where residents feel empowered to bring issues of concern before their elected officials. Individuals may sign up to speak to specific consent or business agenda items. The subject will be noted, and if it requires action or a request, the city clerk and/or the city manager will note as such and provide steps for any after action. People registering to speak are required to acknowledge the rules of decorum for meeting participation. These rules do not limit the content of speaker's message, but are to ensure that speakers understand that we expect this meeting to be conducted in a safe, civil, and orderly manner. The City of Greensboro is committed to promoting an environment that is free of discrimination, bias, and bullying. Therefore, speakers shall refrain from personal attacks. The mayor or presiding officer has the authority to enforce the rules of decorum. Speakers or audience members who intentionally disrupt the meeting or ridicule other speakers will be given a warning, and if unheeded, will be removed from the meeting. That person or persons will be suspended from in-person participation for the next 3 months. In order to preserve their right to free speech, they may attend virtually by Zoom, by phone, or may submit comments by email. Speakers must be signed up to speak by 6 p.m. Any speaker's handouts must be provided to the city clerk or courier for distribution to council. Speakers are allotted 3 minutes and can speak once on an agenda item. Depending on the number of speakers, city council may decrease this time. Zoning matters do allow for a 15-minute presentation both for and against the rezoning. There is also a 5-minute rebuttal period. By statute, council members must vote on all items unless there is a direct financial interest or if they sit on a board of a nonprofit receiving funding on a specific item. All votes will be moved and seconded, and the mayor or presiding officer will announce the vote total. We have a consent agenda for items G1 through G15, which are a grouping of agenda items that are voted on with one single vote to expedite what are believed to be routine or non-controversial items. Any council member may withdraw an item from the consent agenda due to a conflict of interest or for the purpose of voting no. Items removed from the consent agenda for discussion will be placed on the May 21st City Council business agenda. Depending on the length of tonight's meeting, we may take a short break around 7:30 for closed captioning. There are no ceremonial or presentation items. This is the time for the consideration of our consent agenda. Does anybody wish to move an item?
Move it.
Remove?
No, move that.
Does anybody wish to remove an item? No? Okay.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Holston and seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. Council, please vote. And that passes 9-0. Now this is the time to consider our public hearing agenda. Item H1 is a public hearing for an ordinance for rezoning for 2207 Jones Road. William H. Johnson, Jr. of Dream Real Estate, Jones, LLC. This item was postponed from the March 19th meeting without further advertising. Mr. Kirkman?
Thank you, Mayor Vaughn.
And let me just say, we do not have any speakers signed up on this item.
No speak. Okay, I'll move quick then.
None. Anybody here for H1? Got to sign up.
Yeah.
They signed up.
I don't have it yet. If you see the courier, but we'll go ahead with the presentation at this point. I understand.
I'm going to bring the conditions, yeah. Yeah, I'm just going to do the staff presentation and get the conditions in, and then I'll go from there. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Again, as a refresher to the council, the request this evening is a rezoning from R5 residential single family to conditional district residential multifamily. The surrounding zoning to this property is R5 residential single family. To the north, to the east, and to the west, and to the south is CD RM18 conditional district residential multifamily. The subject property currently contains a single family dwelling. North, east, and west of the request are also single family dwellings, and there are multifamily dwellings located to the south. This property is designated as residential on the future land use map of the comprehensive plan and as urban general on the future built form map. As noted, the applicant does ask to add additional conditions to the request this evening, so I'm going to read those into the record for council's consideration. Condition number 1 is just an additional word is added so that it reads permitted uses shall be limited to a maximum of 12 residential dwelling units. And then new condition 3, exterior building materials shall include no more than 30% vinyl materials. And condition number 4, any required tree conservation shall be located within the required landscape buffers, and any required plantings shall be of evergreen materials for year-round screening.
Moved by Mrs. Hightower, seconded by Mr. Holston. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously.
Again, as noted earlier, this is designated as residential on the future land use map and urban general on the future built form map. Staff has concluded this does support the comprehensive plan's filling in our framework strategy to encourage higher density infill development and ensure mixed use projects strengthen and add value to the community, and the creating great places strategy to meet housing needs and desires with a sufficient and diverse supply of housing products, prices, and location. The proposed request as condition does allow uses that are compatible with existing residential uses in the area and does limit potential negative impacts on adjacent properties. Staff is recommending approval of the request. This item was originally heard at the February 19th Planning and Zoning Commission. The commission did vote to approve that request. There were 2 speakers in favor and 4 in opposition. It was subsequently appealed to the City Council and originally scheduled to be heard on March 19th and then continued to this meeting this evening. I can answer any questions.
We do have 2 speakers, William Johnson and Pauline Johnson. You have a total of 15 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for hearing us again, and thank you for the feedback from the last meeting. I'm William Johnson at 2406 North Elm Street. This is my wife, Pauline Johnson. Thank you. We did have a presentation today. I'm not sure if that's queued up or able to be shown. We had sent that in. If not, we could just discuss kind of what happened from last time since we discussed. We did take the feedback from the council, and after we initially went door to door, but we did go to the neighborhood and send out flyers for a community meeting that we held at Mount Tabor Methodist Church off Creek Ridge Road. At the time, we had about 9 people to come and attend the meeting. They signed up, and we gave the neighborhood an opportunity to be able to express their concerns. Many of the concerns were the same ones that they had expressed earlier, which we understood that we couldn't do anything about. Yes, there's going to be increased traffic. There are going to be things that we can't control, but we gave them our word that we would work with them, work with the neighborhood, as well as talking with Councilwoman Hightower to be able to address those concerns as best we can. In terms of, you saw the conditions that we outlined, and many of those conditions, we listened to the feedback from the neighborhood and changed some of the conditions based upon that. So we could not solve all the problems that they had and all the issues that they had, but we felt like we gave everybody a chance to be heard, to be listened to, and so that we are partners. Like I said, my wife grew up on the street. I was in daycare right around the corner. I grew up in the same neighborhood. So we're invested in the neighborhood, and we want to see it to be the best it possibly can be. And we believe the solution will help lead to that goal. So I'll stop and let Pauline talk to you.
Thank you again for your time today. Just want to reiterate just how special this neighborhood is for us. This is where I grew up. This was my grandparents' home, so a lot of my childhood memories are there. And when I got engaged, it was right down the street at the park off of Jones Road. So we have a lot of connections to this land, and we remember the time when the mall used to be a big thing in that area, and we've also seen over the years how things have pulled out of that area. So having an opportunity to serve and actually continue building up that area is special and important to us as our family.
Are there any questions from the council in terms
Any
of that?
questions for Mr. or Mrs. Johnson?
Mr. Johnson, and thank you so much. I really appreciate this. This is the way we want to do it in the community. We want to make sure that we all get something out of it, you know, the neighborhood and you as a developer and a builder. I do know, and I think I asked you about it, but if you will just speak about it, the neighborhood did have the concern about the traffic, but the road that you're going to try to utilize more to kind of buffer some of that. And I appreciate the conditions because I think they're going to make a lot of difference. But the road piece of it, is we talked about how you're going to address that.
Yes, so the buildings, they're not going to be facing the road. They'll really be kind of perpendicular, facing each other. So really when you're driving past, all you see is the two ends of the building. There will be a road right down the middle. Well, not really a road, but you know, an area that, a driveway down the middle that will give people access into their particular driveway and their garage that they have. So in terms of parking, each unit will have their own garage, that have their own driveway, and then we're making special considerations for parking in the back. We do own a couple lots across the street as well, so with their special gatherings and get-togethers, we have discussed about maybe using some of that, one of the empty lots as additional overflow parking. So in addition to that, some of the natural buffers that we're going to do, we try to minimize add to the aesthetic of the neighborhood, but also minimize kind of what's being seen from the street as well. So all those things we think will enhance the beauty of the neighborhood, increase privacy so that those that are currently there in the neighborhood, they're seeing natural barriers as opposed to back up to the backyards of the proposed properties.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really appreciate how considerate you've been, and you heard what the neighbors say. Change is difficult. We all know that. But if we can have change that really enhances our community, I think that's the better way for us to work together. So thank you for being considerate. I like that idea as well. I know you couldn't make that a condition because that's not a zoning thing, but the things you have done speaks volumes, and I think to the neighborhood and your commitment to the neighborhood to continue to talk with them and work with them anytime there's any kind of issues. And you all are neighbors, and that's important. So I really want to thank you for allowing the delay to happen so you could engage the community. And so I'm looking forward to your project. I think it's going to be an asset, particularly in that area. So thank you both for doing that.
Yes, and Madam Mayor, if I could, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, again, thank you for the engagement you had with the community. So very important. Not required, but so very important. I also want to talk a little bit about the design that you came up with. You're taking this infill lot, in a sense, and you're going to create some additional density, but density that is workable within that community. I think we all benefit from throughout Greensboro, not just that community, but all throughout Greensboro. And we'll need more and more of these types of ideas. So if you have any more lots or any other ideas to help us with those lots we have internally, please bring them forth. Again, thanks so much for your engagement.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, is there a motion we can close the public hearing? So do we have a motion to close the public hearing? Motion to close. Second. Okay. Mrs. Hightower, Mrs. Boozawaiter, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 9-0. Mrs. Hightower and Mr. Holston moved the item. That does require a statement. Nope. Yes, it does. Statement of consistency.
The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to approve the rezoning request for the property at 2207 Jones Road from R5 Residential Single Family 5 to CDRM 18 Conditional District Residential Multifamily 18 to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, future built form map, and future land use map. The proposed CDRM zoning district, as conditioned, permits uses that fit the content of the surrounding area and limits negative impacts on the adjacent properties. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical condition, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest. Thank you.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And that passes 9-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Now we move on to H2, which is a public hearing for an ordinance amending the Greensboro Land Development Ordinance in relation to accessory dwelling units, ADUs. I know we have a short presentation, and we do have 3 speakers signed up, 1 opposed and 2 for.
Well, good evening. Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. My name is Chris Andrews. I'm the Land Development Manager within the Planning Department. This is my first time before you at a council hearing. We had a work session back in the summer of last year, but it's great to be before you. Item H2 is a text amendment for your consideration tonight related to the standards for accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, within the City of Greensboro. A copy of the agenda report as well as a copy of the proposed amendments are included in your agenda packet. These amendments come from Council's February 2023 strategy session with a priority on attainable housing and are supported by the city's GSO 2040 comprehensive plan as well as the city's housing GSO plan. These amendments also come from a desire to perform routine maintenance on our land development ordinance, as well as analysis and kind of the outcomes of many ADU applications that have gone before the Board of Adjustment. I want to take a moment and just provide a few points of clarity in that accessory dwelling units, this amendment does not propose a new use. ADUs have been permitted in single family, really every residential zoning district in the city for a number of years, so there's no new use that's being proposed. There's no direct tie to short-term rentals. That was something we heard through the public process of, confusing the two items, but really these amendments are addressing the challenges of the built form related to ADUs and not how the building or structure is being used. So those two, we want to try to keep those conversations as separate as possible tonight. And then there's no new permit process for ADUs, so there's not a separate permit that somebody would have to acquire because a structure is an ADU. It would simply be the residential building permit process that would be reviewed and inspected by the city. So no new processes are being created here. The highlights of the proposed amendments include that the land development ordinance would no longer require an owner to live within the ADU or the primary dwelling. It's very difficult to enforce or monitor. It would no longer, the LDO would permit the accessory dwelling unit size to be increased to 50% of the primary dwelling. Right now it's at 30, so it would allow half of the size of the primary dwelling. There would be no additional parking space required. Right now, anecdotally, single-family residential development provides more than, or would provide for that space. And then A single-family appearance, which is required in the LDO right now, would no longer be a standard. That's, again, very difficult to enforce and measure. And then that the ADUs would be required to meet the standards of accessory buildings as opposed to principal buildings, including setbacks and height. And I want to, this is a very rudimentary diagram, but it kind of shows right now using the red line as where an ADU might be able to be built on a parcel. And some of the amendments, or with this amendment in treating an ADU as any other accessory structure, would allow ADUs to possibly be built as close as 3 feet from a property line. So there are some other instances where if you're over 15 feet in height, that building has to come back from the property line to 10 feet, and there's still a separation requirement between buildings. But what we're trying to do here is give folks a little bit more opportunity to build ADUs on their parcel itself. At their March 18th, 2024 meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 9-0 to recommend approval of the proposed ordinance as presented. There were 5 speakers in favor of the request and no one in opposition of the request. I'm certainly happy to provide additional details about the public process that we had, the background and research that we did, or answer any other questions from council. But we do ask for your approval of the item, and staff would like to remind council that statement of consistency and reasonableness is required, much like a zoning item, for a text amendment, so that should be provided to you. But at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions of council.
Well, don't go far.
Certainly.
Yes. We do have 4 speakers, 3 minutes each. Those who are for are Dan Curry, Judy Stadler, and William Furlow. And then that would be followed by Douglas Wegner.
Thank you very much. Mayor, members of City Council, glad to be back. It's been a while. My name is Dan Curry. I reside at 1311 Oak Street here in the beautiful Glenwood neighborhood of Greensboro, one of our neighborhoods that I think would be well positioned to take advantage of these amendments. I'm here today in support, and I'm also in my role as the Advocacy and Community Engagement Committee Chair of the Greensboro Housing Coalition, as well as a volunteer member of the Executive Council of AARP North Carolina. You may know that AARP is the largest nonprofit membership organization in the U.S., and AARP has kind of been all over this issue. They've taken a very strong and proactive stance in supporting the development of accessory dwelling units. This is, the reason being, this is one primary method of housing our rapidly expanding older population. An example is the number of Americans aged 65 and older is projected to increase from 58 million in 2022 to 82 million in 2050. Now that's almost a 50% increase, and that's pretty scary, and we're not ready. Where will all these folks live? How will communities such as Greensboro provide safe and decent housing for such a huge increase in the number of older residents? Certainly ADUs are not the only answer, but I'm sure you're aware the federal government assistance for housing developments serving seniors is at historically low levels. The cost of housing, to build housing, is escalating faster than the cost of, faster than our wages, faster than our Social Security benefits for sure. So it's no surprise that the number of homeless and precariously housed seniors is exploding in our community, just like it is across the country. City staff is presenting you today with a well thought out set of revisions to our existing development regulations that already allow ADUs, as Mr. Andrews has said, all across our city. These adjustments follow the national trend to make it easier and more likely that some homeowners may decide to add a dwelling unit to their property for one of several reasons. Could be they want to house an extended family member or a caregiver, which is a huge and growing need in our community, or providing long-term wealth building for the family. With vast areas of our community dedicated to one house on one lot. These revisions are one efficient way to encourage the development of additional housing to meet our community's growing needs without additional public subsidy. One small step, but an important step, and I ask for your support of these revisions. Thank you.
My name is Judy Stalder, 115 South Westgate Drive here in Greensboro, and I'm representing the TREBIC membership, the Triad Real Estate and Building Industry Coalition. We want to thank the city for making the effort to make ADUs easier to build. ADUs are a small but significant tool for creating more housing and more diverse housing in our neighborhoods. Also want to thank staff for using the stakeholder process to develop these amendments to our ADU ordinance and for keeping TREBIC updated during the process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is William Furlow. I live at 1801 Brassfield Road, Unit C, and I come before you to urge you to adopt these changes and to take the lowest of the low-hanging fruit. We all know that we don't just have a housing shortage, we have a housing crisis. We have a burgeoning housing crisis. And I think we also know that it's going to take a lot of little answers to solve this problem, or at least to make a dent in the problem. This is, as the previous speakers have said, this is one small step that we can take towards solving the problem. This is the ultimate in gentle infill, which is what you've said we want. This is the ultimate gentle infill. The Planning and Zoning Commission scrutinized these ordinances. I was at the meeting where they took it up, and they challenged the staff. They asked some hard questions of the staff. As a matter of fact, I kind of thought two of the commissioners were going to vote against it, but they ultimately all voted for it, which I think says a lot. One of the few questions that I think might come up about this is the change in parking, that it's no longer a requirement that there's a dedicated parking space or an additional parking space. But I don't think anyone believes there's going to be an explosion of ADUs all over Greensboro if you make these changes. It's going to be, you know, one here, one there, one there. It's not going to affect parking. And as we all know, every block, every neighborhood, every street, the parking population changes all the time. You have visitors coming and going. You have service people coming and going, caregivers coming and going. Parking is not going to be an issue. I think this is a way to get existing homeowners to help you, help all of us, make a small step in solving the housing crisis. It's easy to say yes to this proposal. And in fact, if we can't say yes to this, I wonder what we can say yes to. So I urge you to pass these changes. Thank you.
Thank you. And then our last speaker is Douglas Wegner.
My name is Doug Wegner. I live at 7602 Wallingford Road. I had to say, coming in the door, I was for or against, but I am actually for this concept. It has a lot of merit. It can go a long ways. What makes me very nervous is the enforcement abilities you have with your staff and the wide open things that can easily happen. You have in here, ownership of accessory dwelling unit shall not be transferred apart from the primary dwelling unit. So how are you going to enforce that? You have...
So I think the property wouldn't be subdivided. So it would still be one...
How can you prevent it? That's my question.
Well, because it wouldn't be platted correctly.
Nobody would know. Just get a surveyor, go out there, chop out this plot, go down to the courthouse and record it.
You'd end up with a cloud on your title. Anybody doing that would be ill-advised. And
That don't matter. I mean, if they're going to do
it will matter when he goes to try to sell either unit.
what you're telling me is you don't have any way to enforce that.
The way we enforce all property transactions.
Beg your pardon?
It's the way we enforce all property transactions. They have to be done according to code, and if not, it results in a cloud on title.
I've already had some discussions with your Register of Deeds over there about how some things get done electronically as well. I won't go into that. I got so much time. I think the off-street parking, to say no, is just kind of a future problem that somebody's going to have to deal with. If the accessory dwelling is proposed for a location, single-family property must contain or retain single-family appearance. What is that? I mean, there's nothing in here that limits a modular unit from going in there. So I'm not asking for you to vote it down. I come up here to try to buy some time, 3 months to 6 months, to really put some teeth in this. I mean, this is a good thing, but it can junk up a neighborhood real easy.
I don't want to cut in on your time.
No, go ahead.
You know, I'm glad that we are considering this, and they would still have to go through the whole TRC process. It's not like they could just decide that they want to put up an ADU without any permits or anything. It would have to go through the process. And I know that you're looking at, like, well, what about people who, yeah, we can what about it to death, but the fact is the way that that it's written is that they would have to come and get permits. Now, I like, and we talked about it briefly, I think, at our strategy session, is Raleigh has something that Mayor Baldwin talked about, the Fast Track program, where Raleigh has 6, I think they went out and they got competitive architects, and there are 6, it's a fast track. You can go online and look at the gallery, and what it does is these are pre-reviewed for building code compliance, which means that they can get these things built quickly, but they still have to comply. I hope that we would do something similar to the fast track. And Mayor Pro Tem, you're always talking about involving local colleges and stuff. It would be a great way to get that. You know, if we had a few pre-approved, and they definitely, if you look at Raleigh's fast track program, they definitely look like a dwelling unit. And they're in a bunch of different styles, you know, so there are a few you can choose from their gallery. I hope that we would do something similar, because it would certainly expedite the process.
I understand that, and I think you're going to do it, and that's the way it should be done. And I just think the way it is right now, this is a little loose. And I said I would not bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up. I worked here 19 years as an inspector. I inspected Northwest Greensboro, and I worked side by side with planning. It's a tricky relationship, and the words get a little bit tricky between the two departments. And I think everybody here agrees the law-abiding people are going to come down here and get a permit and do what they're supposed to do. But it's very difficult once somebody comes in and does something to get something done about it that's not right. And I know you say you're not going to subdivide the subdivision, but that can easily be done. You're out of room. I mean, I grew up a single family. I saw townhouse come next. After townhouse was the condo. You're down to the only thing you can do. And I support the concept, but I just think it needs to be fine-tuned.
I guess do we close the public hearing on this if you're through?
Yeah. Are you finished?
I have one question. How many people have you got in the field that enforce your ordinances? How many field people have you got?
We have 4 full-time zoning enforcement officers in our roster.
There how many?
There are 4 full-time and 1 roster position for the city.
Thank you. And I'll tell you, the best way that we find out about things is because neighbors usually turn their neighbors in.
Oh, yeah.
So if there is not that, if the board is not up in front of the house that says they have a permit, I can tell you, phone's going to ring.
So is that a way to prevent the mobile home?
Close the public hearing?
Yeah.
Mrs. Hightower, Mr. Holston, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 9-0. Comments?
I just want to know, I know we want to have the fast track permit, but the one thing he did say, are we going mobile homes or modular homes, but that would be, so how are we going to make sure that that's not going to be a case? Because you got to get a permit. You have to get a permit to put a storage building on your property. So that's true. But, so it's not to say you wouldn't get a permit to move it on, but how do we prevent that from happening so that it becomes, I guess, a stick-built?
Yeah, Councilman Tower, if I can shed some light. So manufactured homes are only permitted in certain instances in zoning districts throughout the city and have different permitting requirements. For modular or pre-built, you might see ADU kits online. I mean, I think you can buy them on Amazon and Home Depot and Lowe's and whatnot. Those would need, if you were to buy something, it would need to be inspected and as part of your permit would be inspected by and reviewed by city staff. So our building folks would look at that. That is one of the challenges of pre-built ADUs or any structure, is that they may not be able to be properly easily inspected. So if the components, plumbing, electrical components, whatnot, are not visible and easily inspected, that can create a process or a problem in the process for applicants. So that's one thing that we've kind of advised folks when they do call in to say, hey, I've got a pre-built building that I want to use as an ADU. We say, hey, call our building folks first to ensure that what you're desiring to build can actually be permitted in North Carolina as well, because they may be built in some other state that does allow that type of building, but we may not. So
Yeah, so that may be something that we may look to put in our requirements.
Councilman Hightower, if I can add one more thing. So the requirement is that the new dwelling units have to be built on permanent foundations. And so that typically will take care of some of the manufactured dwellings, some of the modular construction, where you can't just, pull a trailer up and pop it on there. It has to be built on a permanent foundation. And so we'd have to go through the permitting process and other things. So that should address that concern.
But as he said, what if somebody don't call it in? I mean, they just roll one up there, and it's got to be connected.
I would agree that we'll get a phone call pretty quickly if something happens, and then we'll go through our normal enforcement process, and that will include not only zoning, but that would include probably building and fire as well, going through their enforcement procedures. It's a public safety issue at that point because we can't say that the structure is safe if it's put in that scenario.
So, because it would need water attached to it.
Mr. Holston?
Yes, 2 questions very quickly. One, with electrical, are there any updates or changes to here we are.
Go ahead and continue the question, sir.
Are there any updates or changes to how electrical is delivered to these ADUs, or?
No updates to I don't know if you're leading on to how
do they have to have their own power source, their own box, or they can?
Within the ordinance right now, and this governs all accessory structures, whether it's just a garage, a shed, whatever, the ordinance requires that the utilities branch off from the primary structure, the primary dwelling. There is an opportunity for what's called the Type 1 modification, which would be kind of evaluation by the planning director for almost like a mini variance type thing. But, so that would be the relief that someone would seek. But right now, the utilities need to come from the primary dwelling or primary building.
Okay, great. And my second question was about the mobile homes, but you've answered that, so I am complete. Thank you.
Zach, then Mary Kay.
I just want to commend staff. This is not something that y'all have taken lightly. I mean, I know I attended numerous community meetings. The fact that we only had, 4 speakers means that y'all did a really good job listening to folks that were really concerned. And, I just commend y'all for it. That and we can't, it's hard to govern things that people might do illegally. I mean, I think we've got something here that's doable, not that it wouldn't be tweaked at another time, but you did a good job. Thank you.
Just one quick question. Does anyone happen to know, and it just came to me, I know that HOAs are a big part of a lot of communities, that some of those communities may ask that these not be allowed in their communities. Has there been any pushback from that?
We had an online, I had a survey for a while, and some folks did offer that their HOAs may not allow that and whatnot. So if an HOA desired to do that, that would be above and beyond city ordinances. So much like building materials or landscaping requirements, yes, they could make other decisions.
Like the short-term rentals.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one other question. What made you all take away the parking requirement of being on? Because I get a lot of complaints in neighborhoods where people just parking on the street, parking on the grass, parking wherever.
Yeah, we heard from both the technical advisory committee, which was designers, builders, land use attorneys. That was more of our technical group, as well as the community focus group that who are members of the community that were nominated by council members. That was not something that they felt strongly that needed to be continued, and really was a barrier, cost barrier, design barrier. You have to just account for that space where that parking space would be on their property, and was just one of those other kind of hidden costs as part of the ADU process. So it was something that there was support on kind of both sides of the aisle, so to speak, for eliminating that requirement. And we felt anecdotally, as we look at plans that come in, that most single-family residential properties have more than the 2 required parking spaces. So we felt comfortable with that. Thank you.
Move the item.
Moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Mr. Holston. This does require a statement of consistency.
The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to approve the amendments to the land development ordinance related to accessory dwelling units to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 comprehensive plan, and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plans filling in our framework big idea to arrange land uses to create a more vibrant and livable Greensboro. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plans creating great places big idea to arrange land uses to meet housing needs and desires with a sufficient and diverse supply of housing products, prices, and locations. The request is reasonable as it addresses necessary changes related to enforceability of standards and allows for more flexible placement of dwelling units in the city, and approval is in the public interest.
Council, please vote. And that passes 9-0. Now we will do H3 and H4 together. We do have one speaker in favor. Item H3 is a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for property located at 4629 High Cone Road and a portion of High Cone Road right-of-way, 1.0 acres, Fire District Number 13, Inc., City of Greensboro. And item H4, public hearing for an ordinance for original zoning for 4629 High Cone Road and a portion of High Cone Road right-of-way, Fire District Number 13, Inc., and City of Greensboro.
Move item H3. Second.
We do have one speaker for. I have a Brent Sievers.
Good evening, Council. I'm Brent Sievers, work for FEI Consulting, 8518 Triad Drive, Colfax. I'm really here just to field any questions you may have pertaining to the project. So.
Thank you. Might want to stick around then.
Move item H3.
There's.
For an annexation, I thought it would be. I didn't think we'd need any, but anyway.
I'm happy to share information, or I'm happy to let you proceed with the vote. Which, sir? Okay.
That's okay, good. Go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I'll keep this very, very brief. Basically, this is a request for an existing fire station that is seeking access to city water, and therefore, under our policy, they're in growth tier 1, and therefore they must be annexed into the city in order to connect to city services. The reason that this requesting R3 zoning, even though it's a institutional governmental use, is just because the surrounding zoning in that area is R3, so that was for a consistency standpoint. But the residential does allow for the fire station as a by right use. So, any other questions?
I moved H3.
Was there a motion on H3?
I did.
Mayor Pro Tem? Okay, so moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Mrs. Abuzawader. Item. Mrs. Hoffman? That H3 passes 9-0. H4 moved by Dr. Wells, seconded by Mrs. Hoffman, and that requires a statement of consistency.
The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to approve the original zoning request for the property at 4629 High Cone Road and a portion of the High Cone Road right-of-way from County AG Agricultural to City R3 Residential Single Family 3 to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the Comprehensive Plan, future built form map, and future land use map. The proposed City R3 zoning district permits uses that fit the context of the surrounding area and limits negative impacts on the adjacent properties. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Okay, council, please vote.
That'd be it.
And that passes 9-0. That is the end of our public hearings. Now we move on to the general business agenda. I will take items I1 and I2 together. I1 is a resolution approving bid in the amount of $12,062,100 and authorizing execution of contract 2021-054A with Jimmy R. Lynch and Sons, Inc. for the TZ Osborne Primary Clarifiers 1 through 4 Rehabilitation Project. And item I.2, ordinance to amend the Water Resources Capital Project Revenue Bond Fund budget to establish funding for the TZ Osborne Primary Clarifier 1 through 4 Rehabilitation Project in the amount of $12,062,100. Council, please vote.
For the record, I'm a no, because the MWB is awful. Man, what did you say? $12 million.
And that passes 8-1 with Mrs. Hightower voting against. Do we have a motion for I2?
I2, motion. Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Council, please vote.
Mayor Ron, could you confirm who seconded that, please?
And I'm a no for that as well. $12 million and 1%. It's not satisfactory.
And that passes 8-1 with Mrs. Hightower voting no. Item I3 is a resolution approving the water and sewer extension policy outside the city corporate limits effective April 16th, 2024.
Second.
That's moved by Mrs. Hoffman and seconded by Mrs. Abuzawader. Council, please vote. I do want to thank staff for working on this extension policy. We haven't had an update in a very long time. I think it was April of 2012. I think this is a good product, and it also allows communities around us to know what they can expect. And one thing that was very important, that passes 9-0. One thing that was very important to me is that these communities have some skin in the game. And I think, you know, it depends on how big their budgets are or how small. It's not a one size that fits all, but I think this gives everybody an opportunity to really benefit from the great economic development announcements that we've had. It will take a regional approach to these economic development announcements, and it's good that we can help some of these smaller communities out, and we'll still get water and sewer revenue as well. So all in all, I'm happy with the product. I'm glad we took a little extra time and, in my opinion, got it right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank Mike as well, because Mike and his team, even though I know you had help, but I do like the flexibility of this policy. Now that we've approved it, how soon do you expect us to start to begin to have those discussions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. Very much appreciate all of your feedback. We couldn't have gotten here without your input, so I very much appreciate that. So our next steps is, once it's adopted, what we will do is of course, it will be posted so it can be used, and then we will turn around and we will start looking at how it can be implemented. And if you remember, one of the key components is the interlocal agreement portion. So that will require council consideration, of course, for when we have a request to go into another jurisdiction. So we've had one from Pleasant Garden. So what we plan to do is we will touch base with council again, give you an update as far as where that stands and some of the highlights of what could be proposed in the interlocal agreement. And then our hope is within the next month or two after we've touched base with you is presented. That would be the first one that would be under this new policy. The next one that I anticipate would happen is after Piedmont Triad Regional Council. PTRC is doing a feasibility study for Sedalia. That should finish up by the end of the year, so we will certainly keep council apprised of how that goes, but that I would anticipate by the end of the year we would be in a position to present to council some conditions and a request for a potential ILA for Sedalia.
And thank you, Mike. One thing I guess as you look at doing that, I think the concern was who would maintain the lines and how would that be addressed, but I think all that will come about in your conversations. But
Absolutely, yes. So one of the great things about the ILA is they're unique in every situation, but council has the opportunity in every one to kind of weigh in as far as what are the considerations that are important. And for me, absolutely, the city owns the infrastructure, the water and sewer infrastructure. That should be one of the key components and will be, I foresee, in all of our ILAs. So yes, the city will retain infrastructure that goes into another jurisdiction.
Great. I think that's good for us to make sure we protect our interests as well. So thank you all. Thank you for doing this.
Tammy?
I just want to say that Mike and I spoke earlier about what happens in ensuring that the equipment on the other side, you know, the community's equipment that ties to ours, and any damage that their equipment might cause to ours, and making sure that there is some provision in place to make sure that we aren't going to, because they mismanaged their part of the equipment, that we're not going to pay the price on our pipes. So we've got that as part of one of the check boxes that we've got.
Thank you.
Yes, we do. Thank you very much for bringing that up. And that will be in a consideration for council tonight as you look at Peace Haven. We have already instructed our engineer to look at that.
We will now move on to items I-4 and I-5. I-4 is a resolution approving the acceptance of state appropriated funds in the amount of $1,455,000 for the extension of water and/or wastewater service to Peace Haven Community Farm, and item I.5, ordinance to amend state, federal, and other grant fund budgets to establish funding for Peace Haven Community Farm water and/or sewer line construction project in the amount of $1,455,000.
Move I-4.
I think I heard a lot of people moving the.
I'd like to be, I punched it as well.
Moved by.
I punched it too, so I don't know if it went through though.
I-4 will be, I-4 will be moved by Mrs. Abuzawader and seconded by. And I need a second. Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. And then I-5 will be moved by Mrs. Hightower and seconded by Mr. Holston. How's that? All right, so you got I-4?
You did well, Madam
So I-4 is, you got that? Okay, council, please vote. And everybody is so excited about this because Peace Haven Farm is such a jewel in our community, and it is truly life-changing. And to see that they can make it bigger to accommodate more people really is wonderful. And passes 9-0. And then did you, yes.
Second one.
And they would not have been able to do this without assistance.
I don't know. I press it. Who knows? Mike, can I ask one quick question? I know we talked about it, but it does still say water. So we're going to be able to help with water too? Or?
Yeah, our intention is the no funds, the city will not have to expend funds. That's a great thing about the grant. It should cover for utility extension. So the way we have been in conversation with Burlington, the city of Burlington, so the plan is for us to provide sewer service. It's easier for them to connect to our system on sewer. Burlington has plans to extend water south to Peace Haven Community Farm, so we're working very closely. My expectation is that we won't have to use all of those funds. So any leftover funds, we will come back and ask for approval of council for an interlocal agreement with Burlington so they can access those funds as well. So that's our intention. Burlington's going to provide water, we're going to provide sewer.
Right. I like the partnership of that. Thank you.
I don't know what we can do for
All right, that passes 9-0.
Okay.
We now move on to item I.6, which is a resolution approving a reimbursement agreement in the amount of $1,364,896 with the North Carolina Department of Transportation for utility relocations as part of the Gallimore Dairy Road project.
Move the item.
Second. That's been moved and seconded. Council, please vote. And that passes 9-0. And our last item, I.7, is a resolution to approve contract for Fire Station 14 renovation for the amount of $3,869,395 with Samet Corporation.
Move the item.
Second.
It was moved by Dr. Wells and seconded
okay.
by...
That's fine. That's fine.
By who?
I have Councilmember Thurm.
And seconded by Mrs. Thurm. Council, please vote.
I voted yes. I guess.
And that passes 9-0.
This is what I want to see for future contracts, the MWB participation. It's got to get better.
Well, I see we have our MWBE director and our fire chief here, so they hear that. Thank you. All right, that is the end of our printed agenda. Boards and commissions. Mrs. Hoffman, Mrs. Thurm, Dr. Wells, Mayor Pro Tem, not me?
No, none.
Zach? Hugh? Sharon? No. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, may I make?
Yeah, before I just want to make, because I know we're going to go into a closed session, and while people are still here, I want to just recognize that the Dudley High School class of 1963 is awarding our one and only wonderful Mayor Pro Tem Johnson the Living Legacy Award this Saturday. And so I did just want to...
The best thing about it is I'm living.
That you're living.
And you know, that is the best thing about it, because we always say that we need to recognize people for the great things they've done while they still know that. So thank you. Mrs. Hoffman?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I move that we go into closed session to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, or conditions of initial employment of a prospective individual employee.
So that has been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. That's 7-2. We'll probably be in closed session for a while. Don't know what I anticipate when we come out, but Dr. Wells did want to make one.
Yes, I want to invite especially the constituents in District 2 to our town hall tomorrow evening from 6:30 until 8 at the Bennett College Global Learning Center. It's calling it the 3 Ds of District, 3 Rs of District 2. So we're going to revisit and revise. So we want you to come. Be there tomorrow night at Bennett.
Reading, writing, and roofing.
Very quickly, Saturday, April 20th is Earth Day out at Keeley Park from 1 to 4, Office of Sustainability and Resilience.
All right. We ready?
Welcome to Gate City Insider. I'm Rosemary Plyben. Most of us are at least a little bit familiar with Greensboro's place in the history of the American Revolutionary War. General Nathaniel Greene led about 4,500 American troops into battle against British General Lord Cornwallis and his force of about 2,500. A fierce fight with the British earning a slim victory, but leaving the British vulnerable, leading to a surrender at the Battle of Yorktown just a few months later. Many of us learned in school that that Battle of Guilford Courthouse was where America lost the battle but won the war. And today, we can revisit our history at Guilford Courthouse National Military Park. Aaron LaRocca is superintendent of the park. He is here for a little walk through the park with us. Hello, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to be here. We got to have a walk through the park in the fall, and so now we're going to share a little bit of that with folks. Let's talk first a little bit about you, though, because I'm interested. What was your road to becoming a park superintendent?
Oh, I appreciate the question. So I've been a National Park Service employee for about 18 years. I actually started as a volunteer. I was a history student at George Mason University, and a park ranger, volunteer coordinator, sent out a recruitment email. I had no idea what I was going to do with my career. I said, oh, maybe I'll try volunteering for the National Park Service. It worked out. At the time, the Park Service had a hiring authority. I was able to get a temporary position, turned into a permanent position. From there, I was a park ranger volunteer coordinator, getting to facilitate volunteer activities. It was one of my favorite times in my career, people giving of themselves, their time, their talent to help meet the mission of the National Park Service. Supervisory park ranger at Clara Barton National Historic Site in Glen Echo Park. All my time at the Park Service before coming to Greensboro was in a park outside of Washington, D.C. called the George Washington Memorial Parkway. My final assignment at the Parkway was I was the chief of staff supporting that superintendent with all our external facing responsibilities. I was the liaison to our nonprofit partners, congressional liaison, public information officer.
A lot of hats.
A lot, quite literally a lot of hats, yes.
And so how did you end up here?
This job was announced, and in the National Park Service, people compete for jobs, so I was lucky enough to do okay on the interview. And then from there, the position was offered to me, so I've been here for about almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in May of 2024.
Well, we're glad to have you. Had you, before you got involved as volunteering first with the parks, had you visited many national parks?
I grew up going to parks.
Okay,
yes.
good. Yes,
so
it was a thing.
there's a program in national parks where you can get your passport stamp. And so my family grew up doing that, and I ended up working in some of those parks where I got my passport stamp.
That is cool.
So yeah, I got a passport stamp for Clara Barton National Historic Site in 1988. And then 20 years later, I was working there as a supervisory park ranger.
Did you have one for here, though?
I did, for my first day on the job.
Yes,
I certainly did.
You still have the passport?
I do, yes.
Oh,
It's our
that is super
family
fun.
book, so it has, nearly 40 years worth of visiting national parks.
That is a great story. I love that. Okay, let's go back a little bit further in history,
Sure.
past when you were a little boy.
Okay.
And talk about what Greensboro was like in the late 1700s.
So no Greensboro. So at the time of the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, Guilford County was a new county within the state of North Carolina, and there was a small town, Martinsville, that was on a road. The road that we now call New Garden Road was known as Salisbury Road, and there was a courthouse there with a small hamlet of about 50 residents at the time of the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, 8 miles from what is now present-day downtown Greensboro.
Okay, so it looked a little bit different.
A little bit different, for sure.
So set the stage for the battle just a little bit. What led to really this confrontation between General Greene and Cornwallis?
Sure. So this is the Southern campaign of the American Revolutionary War. Most people associate the Revolutionary War with the Northeast, but there was a Southern campaign primarily focused around Charleston, where the British Army, led by General Cornwallis, was seeking to gain support, supplies, resources for their war effort in an attempt to break apart the colonies, essentially to divide and conquer. So General George Washington sends General Nathaniel Greene down to confront Cornwallis as part of the Southern campaign, and they, for lack of a better description, chase each other around the North Carolina and South Carolina countryside and have a number of conflicts, the most significant conflict being here outside of Greensboro, or present-day Greensboro, at the Battle of Guilford Courthouse.
Okay, and so what did that look like? What are some stories from that actual battle?
So the the main takeaway was this defense in-depth strategy used by General Nathaniel Greene. It was a strategy that the Continentals, or the Americans, had used early in the war to great success, and they used it here at Guilford Courthouse. It was Greene's idea to line up his most inexperienced troops in the front line. There was 3 lines, so the first line would have been the most experienced troops. The most well-trained troops, the regulars, would have been on that 3rd line. And what happens is the British essentially slam into these defensive positions, and because of the defensive positions, the Americans, the Continentals, are able to inflict a lot of casualties on the British. So the British push the Americans off the battlefield, but because of this defensive strategy, all those casualties, which then later leads to the surrender of General Cornwallis to General Washington at Yorktown.
You know, it's hard for us to kind of get a view or an idea of like what battles were like. Like, how long did this last?
Oh yeah, it's about 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I mean, so it wasn't days and days.
That's
or
right,
months,
and
yeah.
it's a series of conflicts. So there's a number of conflicts as part of this southern campaign. That the Battle of Guilford Courthouse is just the largest. So people are familiar with Cowpens or Kings Mountain. Earlier in the war, there was a battle at Morris Creek, which is another National Park Service site also located in North Carolina. So there were a number of conflicts within the Revolutionary War in North and South Carolina, but Battle of Guilford Courthouse was the definitive one of the Southern campaign.
Right. Okay, so immediately after the battle, immediately after the war, were there any efforts to kind of preserve or mark the area of this battle?
No, it's nearly forgotten about until 100 years later, when a man named Judge David Schenck comes to Greensboro and wants to essentially redeem the battlefield from oblivion. And so as a private citizen, he purchases the first land. He also starts a nonprofit organization called Guilford Battleground Company. It's a group of local leaders, and together they start to acquire the property that later becomes Guilford Courthouse National Military Park.
How did he even know where it was? I mean, how did he figure that out?
Yeah, so had to work with the people who, it was a farm site, that's one of the first, so he talked to that family, he engaged with the family, did his own research, did kind of excavations, what we would consider excavations, finding artifacts to kind of identify key areas of the battlefield.
So, I mean, really, storytelling was such an important part of, finding the way and marking what had happened, because there hadn't been care to do that.
It wasn't marked, that's right, it wasn't
really
preserved. Yep.
So, when did it become part of the National Park System?
So through the Guilford Battleground Company, they start engaging Congress, right? They first start engaging Congress for money for monuments and memorials in the park. And then in 1917, what we refer to as our enabling legislation is passed, and that enabling legislation does 3 things. It transfers the land that was originally owned by Guilford Battleground Company to the National Park Service. It designates Guilford Courthouse as a national military park. National parks can have multiple designations. People are familiar with seashores or parkways or national parks or recreation areas. Guilford Courthouse National Military Park is established by this law passed in 1917. It also gives future park managers the authority to acquire property that would have been part of this original battlefield.
Okay, so, and when we talk about the original battlefield and we think about where the park is today, it's not just that area though, right? I mean,
it's a much smaller portion of that original battlefield.
Yeah.
So currently the National Park Service manages about 250 acres of a 1,000-acre battlefield. So the battlefield would have stretched both north and south of the park, what is now into kind of the neighborhoods that surround the park, also into the cemetery that is shares a boundary with the park. So yeah, the park is much smaller than that original battlefield.
All right, so we're going to dive into this a lot more, like what the park is today, how people use it, how they've used it over the years, how they're using it today, what's ahead in the future. We're going to skip a little bit ahead to present day, leave the 1700s behind, find out exactly what's going on at the park right now, how you can be more a part of it, and how it can be part of the future of the park. That's coming up after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Gate City Insider. Today we're taking a short trip to Guilford Courthouse National Military Park for a much longer trip through history to our nation's very founding, in fact. Aaron LaRocca is the park superintendent. He is here with us today. Hello again. All right, let's talk a little bit. We talked about the history of the park, the land, how it's actually, what we mark as the park is a much smaller area than the actual battlefield that would have taken place in the 1700s. So how has, since it's become a park, how has it been used over the years? What has that looked like?
So the original intent of the people who first preserved the battlefield was to create a destination for a patriotic pilgrimage. It was the idea of the Guilford Battleground Company that people would come from all over North Carolina to see other North Carolina patriots. So they start to erect monuments and memorials to people who fought in the Battle of Guilford Courthouse or other battles related in North Carolina, other monuments and memorials to Revolutionary War and pre-Revolutionary War battles. They start to reinter people, so North Carolina patriots at the Battle of
At the battlefield.
At the battlefield,
park, yeah.
yes. For instance, 2 of the 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence from the state of North Carolina are currently buried at the park, right? So it's their idea that people would come to Guilford Courthouse National Military Park to reconnect with their patriotism.
And to learn about history, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
So, so now, what has that evolved into? What does that look like now? I mean, that's still happening, I suppose. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we encourage people to come and learn about the battle and the significance of the place and why it's preserved as part of the National Park Service for future generations. But it also serves as a destination for recreation, right? It's part of the green space landscape in the city of Greensboro. So people come to the park for their daily workout or to walk their dog in this place that's preserved because of its connection to the Revolutionary War.
Okay, let's talk about recreation for a minute. So what things are allowed, what's not allowed, and how much space is there, trails, paved walkways, all of that in the park?
So there's about 4 miles of paved, what we would call inner trails. They're referred to as inner trails because we have the tour road, which is a loop that people, and both on the inner trails and on the loop road, people walk. They ride their bikes. You're allowed to ride your bike on the tour road, not on the inner trails, and they walk their dogs. It's all about appropriate recreation. This is hollow ground. As I just said a minute ago, people are reinterred there, people are buried there, people lost their lives there. So it's about appropriate recreation. So you can go next door to Country Park for a zip line or a paddle boat experience, but you won't find that in Guilford Courthouse National Military Park.
Any other rules that you want visitors to be very aware of when they're using the park for recreational purposes?
All the rules are posted and listed, so I'd encourage you to do that research before you come. There are appropriate places for picnicking in the park. You can picnic at Hoskins Farmstead, which is historically operated as a farm. But it's all about appropriate recreation in what I would call the core area of the park.
Right. Okay. So for those who want to really learn about the history, to visit, to see sacred spaces, how is the best way to explore and do that?
So for those who come Monday through Sunday, first stop, visitor center.
Yeah.
Right? Interact with a park ranger. There's nobody who knows more about that place, whether we're talking about the recreational opportunities available to visitors or the history, than the park rangers. They do a wonderful job. The park rangers, you can go through and get a brochure. That brochure has a park map. It'll talk about what kind of recreational opportunities, the map for the tour road and the other trails that are available to people. But it'll also give you some idea of the significance of the place. So that brochure is a great way to start to kind of introduce yourself to the park. There's also a lot of programs that we have called Junior Ranger programs. So for our younger visitors who want to come to the park, and they can earn a similar looking badge. It's not this badge, but a similar looking badge if you complete a number of activities in our Junior Ranger program. And we always offer maybe a great way to visit the park is using this. So through the National Park app, we offer a number of different kind of mobile experiences. You can take a driving tour, you can take a walking tour, you can take a monuments tour, all available on your phone. So if you don't want to use the brochure, you're there when the park visitor center is closed, you can experience it using your phone.
What are some places that are kind of off the beaten path that people maybe don't often stop by, but maybe would get a lot out of if they did?
So a lot of the recreational users use the tour road for their recreational activity. I think they like it because it's a little bit more open. It's a loop. You're not going to get lost, right? You know where you're going. But I love walking on the inner trails. It's almost like an oasis in an urban or suburban setting, right? Especially in the summertime when leaves are out, you can literally get lost out there. But one of the reasons I enjoy it so much is because you get a true sense of the topography of the park, and that topography really plays into the history to understand the defensive lines and the battle that unfolded there.
Yeah, you really have to think. You can also see a lot of wildlife.
That's right.
In the park.
I was walking in the park the other day. We had some pileated woodpeckers and a whole bunch of other neat birds and tree species to check out.
And I see deer just about every time I'm there, and they just watch you walk. They're so used to the people now walking by.
Yeah, I see them every day. I kind of wave to the deer family. Yes,
They're friends.
yes.
Yeah. All right, well, you might see some construction happening in the park. What's going on there?
So very exciting. Over the course of the last 18 months or so, the park has been awarded nearly $2 million in special project funds to undertake some special efforts in the park. The park's annual operating budget is $1.3 million. So to bring in $2 million just for construction projects is significant. So yes, later this year, we're going to start and kick off a trail rehabilitation project. So all those inner trails that I was referencing, the asphalt trails, they'll all be replaced in kind. As part of that project, we're going to improve the accessibility around the Green Monument, which is kind of the core area of the park, and the visitor center. We've also brought in funds to rehab the Coble Barn, which is part of the Hoskins farm site. So yeah, we're very excited about some upcoming construction projects and the benefits to the visitors.
The reenactment is a really popular way to experience a battle. And explain what that is and why it doesn't actually happen in the National Military Park.
So that's right. The reenactment takes place next door at Country Park, and it is a reenactment of the battle that happened at Guilford Courthouse. Country Park actually sits in the footprint of that 1,000-acre battlefield. The National Park Service, as a policy across the National Park Service, does not allow for battle reenactments on National Park Service property because it's very challenging to actually recreate a battle. You can't recreate the horror, the loss, the fear, right? And so it is policy of the National Park Service to not host reenactments on National Park Service property.
Okay, so that happens in the spring in Country Park, and so people can find out more about that. If you want to get more involved, what are ways to support the park?
So shout out to the staff. There's 11 of us there who work extremely hard to ensure that our resources are preserved and protected for future generations, the mission of the National Park Service, and to provide access to this place and recreational opportunities. There's 11 of us. The mission of the Park Service is to preserve this place for future generations. So it's kind of daunting to think that 11 of us have to preserve this place in perpetuity. So we rely on co-stewardship, right? Those people who give of themselves, the volunteers who help give programs or help with projects in the park, right? The people who have experiences in the park. You talk about your experience with the deer, right? That creates a connection. The goal of the National Park Service is to create connections for visitors so that you understand the value of this place, whether the value you assign to it is because of a Revolutionary War battle or because you like to walk your dog there. You have a connection to that place. That connection, in theory, helps you to steward that place, look after it. So that's our goal as the National Park Service, is to create opportunities for shared stewardship to preserve this place for future generations.
So along those lines, what is it you really hope people get out of a visit to the park?
Something that's for you. I want you to create a connection that makes that place meaningful for you. Whether that's a recreational opportunity, whether that's a deeper connection to the Patriots of North Carolina, to the battle, whatever that might be for you, why is this place important for you? If you can identify why that place is important for you, you'll help me preserve it for future, you'll help us preserve it for future generations.
Yeah, because it's on all of us.
It is
on all of us. Thank you. Okay, so we dove into the historic battle. We took a visit to the park today. Next, we're going to kind of look into the future, pull out the crystal ball a little bit, try to figure out what's going to be happening with that park and what it might look like for those future generations that we're working so hard to preserve it for. So stay with us. Welcome back to Gate City Insider. History, national pride, beautiful landscape, maybe just a place to burn calories. We have lots of reasons to visit Guilford Courthouse National Military Park. Superintendent Aaron LaRocca hopes that you will come for any reason, that any or all of those reasons, just to become a steward of the park. Hello again. Okay, so we talked about, before we talk about the future really of our hometown park, tell us a little bit more about the National Park Service. How do you work with cities, counties, community groups, volunteers? How do you all work together and make that work to, as you said, further the mission, become stewards of the park to keep it around for future generations?
Yeah, again, shout out to the staff. There's 11 of us responsible for preserving this place in perpetuity, so we really rely on the shared stewardship model. And in my time at Guilford Courthouse National Military Park, that shared stewardship model is strong. We talked about Guilford Battleground Company. That original Battleground Company kind of folded because there was no reason for them to exist. And
they reached their goal.
They reached their goal, but then in the 80s, another nonprofit using that same name was restarted. So there is currently the official nonprofit partner of Guilford Battleground National Military Park is GBC, Guilford Battleground Company. Okay. So it's a group of volunteers who help support the park in all kinds of different opportunities, whether that's facilitating special events around anniversary weekend, or we just recently had a shared success with a partner where we were able to procure a cannon. So there's a lot of different things that we work on with GBC to help preserve the park and create those opportunities for transformative experiences. But there's a number of other stakeholders too. We work closely with the Daughters and Sons of the American Revolution, people who have ancestral connection to the Battle of Guilford Courthouse. So those are important important partners. Yeah, and then the city has been a wonderful partner. Shout out to the leadership of the City of Greensboro and their engagement with the National Park Service and helping us to do some special events and programs. One that we hosted in the park last year was an attempt to elevate the story of the African American patriots of the Battle of Guilford Courthouse. Through the city's leadership, there's a bus that goes around the city, a GTA bus that identifies black patriots of the Revolutionary War, and you can see this flag on this bus. This is the flag of the Battle of Guilford Courthouse. I love this as a symbol of the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, because imagine, as a militia person, you coming without any connection to the person standing in line next to you, all unified under this one symbol. So I think this serves as a beautiful symbol, modern day symbol, that brings all these stakeholders together in support of the National Military Park.
I can't imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, are there many national parks that are right in the middle of a city like this one?
There are, but not that many in North Carolina. Right? And so, yes, that is unique. But a lot of people don't realize that, for instance, the National Mall is managed and run by the National Park Service. So, yes, it does happen, but it's unique for North Carolina.
Yeah, and so that has to present some interesting challenges as well. What are some of the things that are
I like to think of them as opportunities.
Opportunities, okay. Tell us about those opportunities.
Right, well, it's an opportunity for shared stewardship, right? We obviously have a lot of key stakeholders. We're in the same space. We have neighbors, right? Those neighbors are key stakeholders. They're users of the park, so we engage with them. So it's a challenge because we have shared boundaries, but it's an opportunity for us to help meet the mission of the Park Service, which is preserve this place for future generations.
We don't think about it as a growing park, but it actually is. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, originally it starts with 30 acres and we're up to 250 acres. That enabling legislation, 1917 Congress acts, it allows us to acquire all properties associated with the 1,000-acre battlefield. We were only up to 250 acres. So we continue to acquire properties when available to better preserve the landscape and present it to the public as you would have seen it in 1781 at the time of the battle.
Okay, so explain what that looks like. I mean, so we took a little walk right around kind of the boundaries of what is now the park, not of the battlefield by any stretch of the imagination. And there's some homes around there, but some of them, and some, there were spaces where homes used to be, and now they are cleared. Talk about what's happened there and what's happening there.
So primarily in one section of the park adjacent to the Hoskins Farmstead, the National Park Service has been successful working with the local residents to acquire properties. So opposed to selling them on the open real estate market, they come to an agreement with either the nonprofit partner, GBC, Guilford Battleground Company, or with the National Park Service to transfer that property or sell that property to the federal government. And so we've been successful in acquiring a few properties. As you pointed out, we recently demoed one which really opened the landscape of that Hoskins farm site, which is key to the interpretation and education of understanding the battlefield, to see kind of this open landscape as it would have been in 1781. But then there's other neighbors who have agreed to a life estate. So once they move on from their home, to transfer that property to the National Park Service so that we can preserve it for future generations.
That is really exciting. So, I mean, really, it could look very, I mean, 100 years from now, likely this park looks a lot different than what we know it right now.
And we've been talking about shared stewardship, right? I mean,
What better example?
What better example of shared stewardship than working to preserve this for future generations?
And to bring it back to what it maybe was hundreds of years ago. There are also some studies and surveys happening that really will impact how we enjoy and use the park for decades to come, and people can kind of be a part of that. Can you tell us what that looks like and how that's happening?
So I'm a new superintendent to Guilford Courthouse National Military Park. So one of the first things I wanted to do was understand the existing management documents and the decisions that my predecessors had to make that, you know, influence my decision making moving forward. And so I went to one of those existing documents. It's known as the General Management Plan. This document was printed in 1997.
Oh, not too long ago.
Well, it depends on your perspective, fair enough. But I think, you know, I like to point out that in 1997, the park didn't look the same, and the city of Greensboro certainly didn't look the same.
Close.
Right? So for my management and the park management decisions moving forward, this is not a useful decision-making tool. So over the course of the last year or so, we've engaged with planners from within the National Park Service, with the city, with the stakeholders that we had mentioned, to do something called the Development Concept Plan, a DCP, which will make management recommendations for all things from the treatment of our facilities, the management of our facilities, to visitor access and circulation, to the management of the cultural landscape. So it'll be kind of a refresh of this document, making management recommendations for the next 20 to 30 years.
A business plan, strategic plan, it's kind of all of that wrapped up into one if you worked on those before.
And then if I could, there will be an opportunity later this year for the public to provide feedback. It'll be the second opportunity for the public to provide feedback as part of this planning effort. We pushed out some concepts last summer. We took that feedback, tweaked the concepts, and then finalizing those ideas to push back out to the public for an additional round of public comment.
And we know that people are really interested, and especially people who live around there, work, use it to get around, whether walking, driving, biking.
Yes.
And so all of that's really important. We're going to have you back to talk with us once you kind of get those next recommendations. Yes, so we can share that and you can get some good feedback from people. So stay tuned on that. When we just talk about the park and the space, what really excites you about the possibilities?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. I think the opportunities to create stewards, I've never been in a park where there's no bigger opportunity to create more stewards for this place. Working through our partners, looking at our recreational activities and allowing, for instance, additional picnicking in areas of the park to allow people to create those connections for shared stewardship. One of the things that we've been working hard under the leadership of a few key stakeholders and city leadership is to elevate the story of the Black patriots of the Revolutionary War. Right? 52% of the population of the city of Greensboro is Black and brown. Well, if we're not telling that story, we're not reaching those people who could also be stewards of this place. Right? The goal here is to create that connection. So if we elevate that story, we're able to hopefully create that connection and create that next generation of stewards for the park.
And we're not telling the whole story either if we don't tell all the stories.
That's
that's
correct,
for sure. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us. We will visit with you soon and find out more about the upcoming plans. We should tell you the park grounds are accessible to visitors every single day of the year. The Visitors Center, if you want to get a head start on some of the history lessons, is open 9 to 5 Wednesdays through Sundays. the battle reenactment that happens annually March 16th and 17th in Country Park. So be sure to follow Greensboro Parks and Recreation for more information on that. And once again, thank you for spending some time with us. Thank you for the tour. I'll see you out there before too long.
All right, here's your stewardship flag.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I will keep that with keep this with pride. I appreciate that. That is our time today. Thank you for spending some of yours with us. For all of us here at Greensboro Television Network, have a great day.
Welcome to the City of Greensboro's budget process. Let's learn how our city government prepares its annual operating budget. A city budget is a proposed plan for how we will raise and spend money throughout the fiscal year. It determines the city's property tax rate and is a critical task that shapes the future of our community. In Greensboro, about 40% of the city's revenue come from sales and property taxes. Another 30% comes from user charges, such as water, parking fees. The remaining funds come from various sources, including state and federal government grants. A little more than 40% of the city's expenses are for personnel. It takes some 3,300 people to support all the city's operations, from police to parks, waste collection to water service. The budget also covers operational costs, such as materials for treating our water supply and for filling potholes. The city also sets aside funds to pay down its debt, supporting the 10-year capital improvement program, which plans for more expensive projects like new buildings, fire trucks, and stormwater improvements. Here's how the City of Greensboro budget is developed. By law, municipal governments in North Carolina must adopt a balanced budget every year. The city's fiscal year begins on July 1st, but budget development begins months in advance. In the fall, the city's budget and finance officials begin reviewing forecasts to help look for changes in the economy that may impact the city's funding sources. Over the winter, city departments review their work plans for the coming year and submit service enhancement requests. These are essentially requests for additional funds to add new services or employees in the coming year. During this time, the City Council also meets to establish its budget priorities, which it expresses through policy decisions, budget guidelines, and recommendations. These priorities represent council members' values and aspirations of our community, and they are the guideposts the city manager and budget officers will use to further develop the budget. Throughout the spring, departments will present their proposed budgets for review. They will also review the capital improvements plan. After months of deliberations, in May, the city manager presents a recommended budget to council members. Then it's time for city council members to have more detailed discussions about their goals and priorities. By law, local governments must provide a public hearing on the budget. This time allows the public to give council and the city manager feedback on the presented budget. The fiscal year 2024-25 budget public hearing is scheduled for June 4th, 2024. Finally, the council will adopt the budget in June, just in time for the new fiscal year to begin in July. The council will also adopt a new capital improvements program, set the property tax rate, and adopt any new or adjusted fees during that same meeting. Want to try your hand at creating a city budget? Try the Balancing Act game, where you get to set your priorities based on the real city budget figures. Remember, your voice matters. Let your council members know how you want to see the city spend its money. Check out the city budget and the capital improvements program and play the Balancing Act, all at greensboro-nc.gov/budget.
Hi, I'm Alexis Armstrong. I'm an artist in residence here at Grove with Creative Greensboro from April 16th to June 10th.
Grove is the Greensboro residency for original works, a new flex place at the Greensboro Cultural Center right inside the Davie Street entrance of the building. It's an 800 square foot space for creative programs, that are being offered by individuals or nonprofit organizations from Greensboro creative community.
My residency is mainly about photography. So what I'll be doing is teaching young girls mainly the ins and outs of photography, but mixing a lot of social media awareness in it. How I plan to mix all of these things together is a little bit of psychology, a little bit of reading, but a lot of hands-on fun time activities. So we will be taking pictures of each other. We'll do little excerpts of readings to kind of like explain things like body dysmorphia. Like, I think that's really big on social media right now. A lot of us don't necessarily know what we look like because we're using filters, we're using the graphic design, we're using the Facetune apps. And then there's people like me, if you go to our studio and you take a picture with us, you're looking at that like, I don't think I look like this. And it's like, you do. You actually do look like this. Let's get comfortable and let's love this, what we actually look like, instead of what we wish we looked like. The passion behind this was my daughter, who's 13. Her name is Paris. And Paris has been struggling with really just accepting her. Last year, I ran a pilot program called She Shot It. And it was basically introducing all of those concepts to a really small group of girls. So giving children, especially young teens, just the confidence to be them. I think that's like something that's like just overlooked these days. My first workshop will be a Mommy and Me workshop. One of the biggest things that I think that we always forget, especially when we're trying to take pictures of our children, is patience. So giving pointers to parents about the different methods that we could use to get these pictures. So this scavenger hunt, I'm gonna do it a couple of times, but the first time I'm gonna do it is at my opening reception. I'm gonna set up different things around the grow space. For those participants that win the scavenger hunt, they'll have an opportunity to get a free session with me here. So they don't have to go anywhere, they just have to come back down here and smile. At the end of this entire residency, what I would like to do is compromise kind of an Instagram grid of the different activities. So every workshop has an activity where you're going to take your own pictures and you're going to send them, hopefully send them to me if you feel comfortable, so that I can put them on like an Instagram grid, not a real one, but definitely print it out for our closing reception. If you are interested in attending any of our workshops, and we have a lot of them, you can catch our schedule on 43north77west.com or 43north77west on all social media platforms.
Moulin Rouge is coming to the Tanger Center April 16th through 28th, and we are lucky enough to get to chat with Christian, who is also Christian. So Christian Douglas is who we're talking with, star of the touring production of Moulin Rouge coming to Greensboro. Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you? Glad to be
I'm
here.
doing fantastic. So excited about seeing the show and seeing you in it. I love your Instagram blurb, a songwriter named Christian playing a songwriter named Christian in Moulin Rouge.
That's more true, yeah.
I love it. Okay, let's go way back though. Can you remember the first time you saw a play or a musical?
Yes, I mean, I remember going to New York for the first time, and I saw Wicked on Broadway.
It was your first?
Yeah, it was my first Broadway show, yeah. So that sticks with me. It was just such an incredible show, the music and all that. I've loved musical theater my whole life, so and also I've loved Moulin Rouge. I remember seeing Moulin Rouge when I was 14 or 15 at a friend's house. It's like crying my eyes out, and it's all kind of, now I'm crying my eyes out on stage every night.
So when was the first time you actually were on stage? What was that experience?
I had a bit of a kind of a slow burn coming to musical theater. I started in choir, and I had solos here and there, but the first musical I did was in college, my junior year. I did Spring Awakening, which is a blast. So I remember that quite vividly, and kind of caught a bit of the bug, and just getting to be backstage and have that community of the cast and sort of all being in it together to tell a story was a very special experience.
So that was in college. So how did you get to touring with Broadway?
Well, in between there, I was in the Army chorus for 4 years. So after school, I auditioned for the Army chorus, and I enlisted and did all of that for 4 years. And then the pandemic happened, and then I moved to New York and got an agent and blah, blah, blah. Now I'm here.
And so you've been with the production, about a year now, a little over a year?
For a year, yeah. I started in the ensemble, covering Christian, and then I had the privilege of being promoted to full-time.
What do you like best about this role?
I love a lot of things about it. I mean, it's such a journey from start to finish, as an actor, coming into the Moulin Rouge as Christian, telling this story. He starts as a sort of starry-eyed puppy dog, and ends the show kind of being a bit more weathered and worldly, and has learned some lessons along the way. Not to mention the music is so fun to sing and challenging, but it's just so up my alley and really fun to do. So,
who is this show for?
I'd say it's for everyone. I mean, it's for anyone who loves theater, or even if you don't love theater, if you love if you love music. There's so much music in the show. There's over 70 songs, either in snippets or in full. If you don't love show tunes, you don't necessarily need to, because there's picking and choosing from top 40 hits spanning 5-6 decades, from the Beatles to Adele to Katy Perry. It's a wild ride musically.
Oh, I cannot wait. So excited about seeing this. And I know that you're going to have people coming back to see it, because so many people have seen the movie or maybe even seen the show before, but you find something different every time you come to a show.
Yeah, you really do. Yeah, we get a lot of, second, third, fourth, fifth time offenders at the show.
That's a good place to be. That for sure is a good place to be. Have you been to Greensboro before, or North Carolina?
I was there for 2 days last year. When I was still in the ensemble, I was promoting the show. Actually, this run, I was the understudy, and I was doing press at the center, I remember. So it'll be nice to come back and get to hang out for a while.
And to be in the title role this time. So that's amazing.
That's right. That's right.
Well, you said earlier your character goes on a journey and is wiser at the end of the show. So what have you learned from playing this character and doing this show?
I've learned that I can do hard things. It's quite a role to take on 8 times a week. You really have to go through it. And as well as vocally, some of the stuff like Roxanne and Crazy Rolling and Come What May, they're all really big sings vocally. So I've learned a lot about my strength and my sensitivity and all kinds of things along the way.
It's going to be a ton of fun. I always like to know if there's something
we should look for as an audience member, being an active audience member? Is there something you want us to look for during the show or notice?
I think just take it all in as much as you can. I mean, there's a lot, especially Act 1, there's a lot coming at you. Lights, costumes, dance numbers, you know, rock numbers, pop, it's just take it all in and be present and enjoy the ride and be open, keep your heart open for love, and that's about all we can ask.
Pretty good lesson to take with you after the show, too.
Yeah.
For sure. Kristen, so fun to talk to you. Thank you so much. Can't wait to see you on stage. Hey, don't forget, Moulin Rouge coming to the Tanger Center April 16th through 28th. Tickets available now at tangercenter.com.
After years of working in restaurants for other people, a husband and wife team decided it was time to take their love of food on the road.
My family business in Mexico has been always involved with food. So as a kid, I remember helping my mom with the family business, peeling up corn to sell corn on the circus. And all the way until I moved to the United States. My first job was on a Mexican restaurant. So it's been my whole life, pretty much.
Well, mine is just with my grandma, you know, her delicious cooking, and I didn't really have that business experience until I got here to this country. I started serving tables at the restaurant where we met, actually, and you know, I did not know, especially because I'm not Mexican. So I had to learn the food, Mexican food and all that. But I loved it. And I mean, it's been 20 years since then. And yeah.
Here we are. She came to the restaurant that I managed back then when we met. And after a couple visits from her mom and herself at the restaurant, we talked and I offered a job as a waitress. So that's where we got.
He didn't need a waitress back then, but he offered me a job anyway.
I've been on the Mexican restaurant scene for 20 years or so. I knew I wanted to do something for our own. I did not want to be working for the restaurant industry all my life. So a restaurant, it was hard to picture because of the money that it needs to be invested on a restaurant. So when we saw the food trucks getting alive in town, we said, okay, probably we can afford something small, and we had an opportunity to get us a small trailer, and that's how we started on the food truck business. When we started the business, it was my best friend, which is my brother, Alex, and myself. We started the two of us. And right before COVID. So since everybody calls like brothers, we said we didn't have much time to think about the name. So we said, hey, let's just call it Taco Bros.
Taco and Bro.
And we always been fan of Nintendo and Mario Bros. So that was something, a little bit of that involved on the name too. Our food comes from, is similar as downtown Mexico City. I mean, we serve our tacos that we serve is the same way that you're gonna eat them in downtown Mexico City. We don't do anything different or fancy. We just stick to what we know people liked and what we know how to do best. And that's basically our menu comes from Mexico City, Cuernavaca, that's my hometown in Mexico. So we try to set as authentic at that region as we can. Well, the most popular are tacos. We sell tacos more than anything on our menu. But my favorite is called alambre, which is a combination of chicken and chorizo. And we can also make a steak and chorizo. And it's served with cooked onions, avocado slices, a roasted jalapeno, corn tortillas on the side, and obviously our hot sauce is always present in any of our meals. So that's I will say alambre is my favorite meal.
I love tacos. You know, marrying a Mexican is just like tacos your your second love. I love it because you get to try different meat. You don't have to just eat all chicken, all beef, you know, or steak. You can mix and match. I also like the quesadilla because I'm a cheese lover, so that comes with cheese. So those are my two favorites. This guy is a hard worker. Everything started during COVID. You know, he stopped working somewhere else where he was because of COVID going on, and it was just me working. And this guy said, "Okay, we have to do something. People have to eat." So we started bringing our trailer. It was a small trailer how we started, and he started calling and emailing and just asking neighborhoods and people just to let us bring our little trailer to serve our food. And that's how we started, and he was very pushy. He didn't give up. He was, you know, I love it that he was almost begging people to let us just try our food, just try our food. And now, you know, we get the emails, we get the calls, we get all of the text messages, come to our place, come bring your food. So it was his hard work that paid off. Our daughter was cutting lemons, I was taking orders. You know, it was fun and different. She got to learn a lot about our food. And also it was fun to work. You know, there were places where it was just him, me, and Mariana taking orders. That's our daughter, Mariana.
Yeah, well, we started with the trailer. It was basically we stick to one serving per day because it was so hard to travel to one location, and the trailer has very limited capacity. So double servings was really difficult to do. So after 2 years, we had the opportunity to get us the Big Bro. That's what we call the Big Bro, and this truck allows to just move our business to the next level, being able to serve 2, maybe sometimes 3 servings in a day, and growing from a family business to a business with right now we currently have 6 full-time members and 4 part-time members. So it's been fun. Obviously, as every business has hard times. Trucks break in, equipment on the trucks break in, so you need to figure it out how to fix it without moving your schedule too much. But we're growing. We now have two big units and maybe more in the future. We enjoy seeing people really liking our food. We enjoy going to different places. We feed schools, festivals, companies. We're going to parks. So just being able to travel to different cities, different events, it's good. It's fun most of the times. And as I said, just watching the people saying, "I love your food. Please come back." Yeah. We love that. That's the fuel to keep showing up next day with a smile on our faces. Our website is www.tacobrosfoodtruck.com. Our telephone number, our taco line actually, that's what we call, is 336-777-6292. We try to answer most of the times, but a lot of times we're super busy taking care of it here, so leave us a message or a text message works as well. Our social media is at Taco Bros NC for Facebook and Instagram.
You can find Taco Bros, well, everywhere. Hey, first check them out online to find out where they will be. TacoBrosFoodTruck.com or follow them on social media at Taco Bros NC. You've probably been to the Greensboro Coliseum complex for a concert, maybe a sporting event. Well, it transforms once again to welcome Cirque du Soleil's Courthouse to Greensboro. Catherine Duvall is head of wardrobe for this show. So how many performers are you dressing every evening?
Each evening. We have on stage 53 artists, and we travel with 2,500 pieces of costume.
Oh my goodness.
It's a lot. Then during a show, I would say it's between 600 and 700 pieces. Then we go through with artists.
So quick changes is what you're talking about.
Quick changes. So we zip, we unzip, we gave new clothes, we hang other stuff. We run because sometimes they forget stuff, and we need. And what it's particular with Courthouse, it's the stage is in the middle. Then we have two backstage. Then sometimes the costume needs to be on one side, but sometimes it needs to be on the other side. Then sometimes we have emergency to bring costume one side to the other side. But it's amazing.
You get in your steps every day, right?
Oh, no worry with that. Yeah.
And so when you say quick change, for those who haven't been in theater before, they might not know, like, how fast are some of these changes?
I would say one of the fastest that we need to do, it's under 15 seconds. Yeah, it goes really fast. But we don't have that much of that fast, but we need to keep the pacing, because you will see Courthouse, there is always something happening on stage, but always something happening backstage to be sure that everything goes right.
Yeah, maybe more happening backstage to make sure on stage is happening like it should, I bet.
I think so.
You've been with Cirque for 17 years?
Yes, 17 years. I'm with Courthouse since 2017, beginning of Arena, and before that I was in Montreal at the headquarters.
What is your most favorite part about this show or this company?
Oh, it's the teamwork. The teamwork, to work with technicians, to work with artists, to work with catering. We need to be all together. It's like to play a soccer game, to play sport. We need to have all the same goals, but to help each other on the field to reach this goal. And I think it's what Cirque, and I will say it's what Courthouse has.
Well, thank you, and we're so glad you're in Greensboro.
Enjoy. Thank you.
Chris, how much music is in the show? How many sounds are in the show? Can you put a number on it?
It's pretty big. I mean, we've got an 8-piece band, but we also have additional sampling music through Ableton to just help beef it up a little bit. Obviously, we can't tour a full orchestra with us around the world. It would be very expensive. So we have the 8 formal musicians playing live, some who jump between different instrumentations. And yeah, it's a big musical show.
Yeah. So what is it like for you backstage during the show? Like, how fast are your fingers moving?
It's not as complex as you might think. We have different roles within the sound department, so I'm not always on the board moving the faders. Sometimes I take care of all our wireless frequencies. Obviously, we've got musicians that sometimes leave their space and go on stage, and they're on like a wireless in-ear monitor pack. So I deal with those frequencies. That's my today job. When I get to a new city, I'm scanning frequencies. I'm making sure there's no interference from anything around.
Oh, that's hard, because right now there's a lot of interference from all kinds of things. We're bringing the interference with our microphone.
This week was especially tough. There wasn't a lot of options around, but that's okay. That's what I'm paid for. So,
what is your favorite part about this show?
This show is just really, there's a sentimental value to it that I think can get lost because of the nature of, it's an older character who's, I don't know how much I'm allowed to give away. It's an older character who sort of goes back through his life and journey in the circus. And that kind of has sort of a sentimental tug on the heartstrings at moments. But it's a beautiful show. There's a lot going on for a lot of different people. So whatever you're looking for, I'm sure there's something for you in it.
Well, we're so glad you made a visit to Greensboro.
I'm glad too. My dad used to live in North Carolina, so it's nice to be back.
Lovely.
Yeah.
How long have you been with Cirque?
For 5 years. Yeah.
What do you like about it?
And I think everything, like a lot of stuff. I mean, we in a good care, like they take care about us good. It's a beautiful show. It's wonderful performance. We have amazing audience all the time. We have live music.
Get to do what you love too.
Yeah, that's the most important part.
Yes. So tell me how you got started doing this.
I started when I was, I think, like 13. Yeah. So as a teenager, and I did like rhythmic gymnastics a little bit before. But my coach is changing non-stop, so I had to stop doing this. And after that, because I was from rhythmic gymnastics, so like my coach from like circus studio, he decided I'm gonna be contortionist. And I found it's very boring for myself. I saw the boy was juggling. I was like, okay, so maybe I can try juggling. But my coach was like, no, you're a girl, so you should be contortionist. I was like, I'm gonna try that. So I keep begging him for a while, and after that he was like, okay, try like this, like this. So I tried it. I think like it works like pretty well. And from that moment, I think he was like, okay, you're going to be juggler.
And so tell me some of the things that you have juggled. What are some of the most interesting things you have juggled in your career?
So something like helmet. I juggle coconut.
Okay.
Like big one, yeah. I think I have even video about this. Yeah. So what else? I mean, like bottle of water and all this thing, like toilet paper, whatever. Yeah.
Can you show us a little? I'm going to back up and give you some space. Oh, I don't even have to give her space. Look at her go.
That's fine. Yeah, we can actually do like this. But
Oh, I have to try? No.
no, we can try.
Thank
We
you.
can do some small thing if you
Can I just toss it to you?
You can toss it to me. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me where to toss it.
Just go.
Anywhere?
Yeah.
Easy. I learned so quickly. While what you see on stage is certainly magical, when you take into account all the people who work backstage, the thousands of them, from wardrobes to technicians to musicians, the show is even more spectacular. Make sure to follow Corteo on social media and check out a show in person the next time you get a chance. You might have to dig way back in your memories, maybe go back in time to figure out why this car looks so familiar. But hey, you're going to see a whole lot more of it when it comes to the Tanger Center for the next season of Broadway. Lynn, how do we keep getting these great shows coming to Greensboro?
Good management. Now, as I said in my remark, 5, 6, 7 years ago, Greensboro wasn't on the Broadway map anywhere. You maybe did 1 or 2 shows every year or so. Now you've got a big subscription base. People know where Greensboro is. You're doing big numbers because Broadway is the commercial theater business. And there are commercial guys that have to finance and capitalize a show and tour across America 52, 68 weeks. And now you're one of those weeks. So when they lay it out, it's like, oh, we want to go there because we know that the audience is already there. We won't be playing to half-empty houses, and the numbers will be good. So that's the biggest part of it.
You go to venues all over the country. How does this compare? How does Tanger Center compare?
Well, number one, you're probably the first or second largest subscription base in the country. And interesting enough, last year you were number 1, Durham was number 2. So you kind of switch back and forth. Durham used to be number 1 pre this building. And the sight lines in this building are excellent. The companies like playing here. It's an easy, technically it's an easy load in and load out because it's a new building. So you build it with the intention, unlike an old movie palace that has issues, and you're not in a decaying indoor retail core downtown. There are places to park the truck. You have places you can store the trucks. We're doing Frozen right now in Providence, 20 trucks. You do the same show. Disney comes to me and says, where do we park the trucks? We're in a downtown urban core. Do you park 20 trucks? You probably can take them out to the Coliseum and set them in the Coliseum's lot. So that's part of it.
What do you like about Broadway? What do you love about the experience for you? What is it about? What makes you keep wanting to see more shows, new shows, shows again?
Well, first of all, I think it changes people's lives, and it's an event. Unlike not to say anything negative about the sports world, but it's a different type of thing. It's more family driven. You take the wife, and many times, most times, women drive a ticket. So you gotta get a get out of jail. You get a get out of jail card if you take the wife and the family.
Not that you're saying that women are like being in jail.
And then what happens is the husband or boyfriend or whatever comes and goes, oh, I can do this. They think they're going to go see Equus, or Shakespeare. And then they come and see something like Six, and they go, oh, 90 minutes. Oh, 6 women singing songs. And it's like, so, and then, it used to be years ago, Broadway spent a lot of energy and time recycling revivals. If you notice, I don't know what, next year, that's kind of a revival. It's a movie, Some Like It Hot. But generally now, most Broadway series have like one revival a year. And most Broadway series have one family show. Yep. And then, so you don't do Aladdin and Frozen in the same year. Right. And then most Broadway series, then the rest are sprinkled with shows that are existing in New York, still there, or have just started to tour. Because what happens when shows just start to tour, especially if they close in New York, a lot of times you get the understudy or the leads in the Broadway show that performed in New York. Right. My best example, is Color Purple. Color Purple closed, and the cast that was on the road was basically the Broadway company. So it's it's very, very, very cool.
Well, I speak for a lot of Broadway seat subscribers and say, keep it coming. Broadway is coming back to Greensboro for season number 4. What do you think of the lineup?
Oh, it's really exciting because I've had the privilege of seeing Anne Juliet up in Broadway. It was a fabulous show. I mean, people were screaming during the performance and cheering on it. It's much like Six's success this year, and I think a lot of women will enjoy it. It's quite a women empowerment show, and it's very exciting. The music is fabulous. Of course, Neil Diamond, that's so great. Michael Jackson's life story, I went to see that in Broadway as well and previewed that. That's a fabulous show, just so exciting. The production's first class. Hamilton coming back is so great. And all the programs and all the great shows we're going to have this year are just great. It's a great lineup.
Why are we so successful? Why is this working so well here in Greensboro?
It's the formula of those season ticket subscribers. Without them, we couldn't be assured of getting these kind of. So one's feeding another. Once we got that season ticket base of 16,000 the first year, grew it to 17,000 this past year, Nederlander sees that. We're one of the largest season ticket Broadway subscriber bases in the country. And when they see that, then they have to support us with first-class, top hot-hitting shows, and you're seeing that. So then when people come and see that, well, then they want to subscribe again, or we would love to get additional. Our goal would be to get to 18,000. So we're never stopping in the promotion of that because Broadway's driving the financial success of the Tanger Center.
Well, so then people are going to ask, are there still season tickets available? Can you still become a season ticket subscriber?
Yeah, there are plenty of seats still available. We have one of the largest capacities in the country, and that's why Six broke their record here. I mean, there are very few facilities in the country that could, what they averaged, over 2,900 seats per show. That's unheard of across the country. Grossing $1.7 million and having 23,000 people come. That was a phenomenal record-breaking show for us in 1 week. And subscribers they see the value of getting one of those subscriptions. Our price is still very low in my view, and it's very attractive, and you can pick your day, and if you have a conflict, you can modify that day and come later. A lot of people change and they find the day, time that works for them, whether it's a matinee on Saturday or Sunday or the other shows as well. So everybody seems to have balanced when they want to come and what they want to enjoy. So we'd love to get to 18,000.
I think that this might do it, this thriller season. When you walk through, I know you're here when people are coming to shows and you hear people talking, what is it that makes you smile the biggest?
Well, I think that they're here, and we've created such a nice environment in the lobby here at Phillips Hall where they can come and socialize and go park the car. Get settled, come in and enjoy meeting with people, socializing, having a beverage, eating something before the show, and then you're going into the best sight lines in America, a comfortable seat, great production, great sound system, and then the first-class shows that Nederlander is bringing us. It's a win-win-win. It's a great night out. I think it's become the social event in our community that you've got to schedule your social activities around, because we're giving you 7 shows, and now next year you're going to come and see Book of Mormon again and see Elf as a special. It's a great use of your dollars, and it's a great way to meet up with friends and family here at this facility. It's so accommodating, it's so convenient, so easy to drive into, park, and come and enjoy the show. So I think our great staff here does a fabulous job welcoming everybody to come in, and that's always great to see.
Do you ever just get to sit and enjoy it? Do you ever just tune everything out and just watch the show?
Yeah, I'm fortunate. I come on date night, and my wife and I will come, and we enjoy the show. So we've enjoyed most of them. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for everything you've done, and thanks for another great year and giving us things to look forward to. Current Broadway seat subscribers can renew their tickets now, and new tickets will go on sale soon. Just follow Tanger Center on social media or go to tangercenter.com to find out more. craving Latin flavors, you have to try Sofrito Latin Innovation Kitchen. You'll come for the food and you'll come back for the flavor and the people.
Hi, my name is Stephen White. I'm one of the owners at Sofrito Latin Innovation Kitchen in High Point, North Carolina.
My name is Angelica Diarco, and I'm the other owner of Sofrito Latin Innovation Kitchen in High Point, North Carolina. When I was little, I pretty much grew up working in a restaurant. My dad had a restaurant when I was little, when I was born, and so I got all the memories from it, the cooking, the running back and forth, the yelling, all that stuff in the back of my mind. Every time I think about restaurant, I just think about that. Later on, when I was in high school, he went back to having restaurants, and at that time, well, I had to help out at the restaurant.
For me, it was cooking in the kitchen with my mom at an early age. She made everything from scratch. I'm the youngest out of 8, so she made bread in-house, cooked breakfast, lunch, and dinner from scratch every day. I would help her knead the bread or get to punch it down when it had risen. The thing that my dad taught me was sausage gravy and biscuits, so I still do that all the time today as well. But Southern foods, my dad was from Texas, my mom from Arkansas. I was working at River Landing at Sandy Ridge as the executive chef. She was one of the servers there. And she came up to me because she was doing a project on starting a restaurant, so she asked me to be her mentor, and things led from there.
Yeah. I was sure I was gonna be like the owner of the biggest chain of restaurants in Colombia. That was my thing when I was young, but didn't turn out that way. My dad did not want me to be in restaurants at all. So you know what, I'm gonna go to school for, it's called Hotel and Tourism Administration. I said, I will not be in the kitchen, I will be in a hotel. Is that okay? He was like, that is fine. So I worked for hotels for a while. And I said, you know what, I like the kitchen. So that's why, and then I got a job at River Landing. And I said, you know what, maybe I should start selling my empanadas.
No one's doing empanadas here in Greensboro or High Point.
Yeah.
So let's start off as one of our appetizers, and then we just built from the menu on that. So we do a little bit of different things from Mexico, El Salvador, Colombia, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Brazil, just different varieties of Latin foods.
But before we opened the restaurant, it took us almost 2 years planning everything, and the year before we opened the restaurant, we went to Colombia. So he got to cook with my sisters. He ate all the street food you can think of, everything. I was so worried. I was like, yeah, you're gonna get sick out here. And he was like, I'm fine, I'm fine. I've been in Saudi Arabia, so I can eat everything. And he did not get sick. So he experimented everything, how we cook the food. And then after 5 days, I was like, hey, I need to take you to a real restaurant. You know, you need to go back to the United States and say that we have nice restaurants here too. So, because it was all street foods, the vendors, the lady that sells this food in the corner, that's all we were eating over there for a while. And then, so we went to a restaurant. The last 2 days, we went to
a couple different nice restaurants.
A couple nice restaurants over there. So he really had that whole experience. We have a video making the tamales, the big pasteles tamales, Colombian tamales with my niece. And then, so it was very great. And I think he really nailed, you know, the flavors and transferred that into American.
It was a good trip because I did get to taste their flavors. And coming back, I could put that flavor into our food.
Yep. It was and then so we had some friends that were from other countries too, and then they came over, they showed us how they make their food, and then this is how we, you know, kind of put together our menu with different countries in it. And I think it helped us, you know, stay in business for all these years. It's just the fact that you come here and you can decide, okay, I'm gonna eat something from this country or something from another country. We can explain the food to them too. We had, like, the first 3 years of our business at the mall, we spent more time explaining the food and how we make it than actually selling it, right?
You do. You have to educate the customer. You really do.
It was fun, and it was very rewarding because a lot of our customers came back with other customers, and then they explained the food to other ones.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really cool, and also the names that they would come out with it when they didn't remember the arepas, you know? Remember that corn cake thin round that you feel it and say, yes, arepa. I say, yes, that one is good. So
there's quite a few favorites. Looking at the menu, empanadas are going to be your #1 seller. The arepas, the Baja fish tacos, bistec con tostones, the bandeja paisa is super popular. We're going to have that prepared for you here in a minute so you can get some pictures of it. But that's the Colombian national meal. We can explain it when you see it. The Cuban sandwich, the churrasco sandwich are very popular. The ropa vieja is a very popular seller as well.
Yeah, ropa vieja sells very well. It is pulled beef, and then how do you make the pulled beef? Is it like
It's basically braised beef. You're going to sear your beef. We saute some vegetables, and we braise it in a rich tomato broth.
And we serve it with rice, beans, and rice, beans, plantains, right? And then ropa vieja. And ropa vieja is literally is like a old clothes.
It translates to old clothes.
You know when the clothes, when your denim are so old, you wear so much that they really shred apart. That's how it is called. And then we also realized that it is, I thought it was a Colombian thing, literally. And then when I came here, it was, okay, Cubans, they do ropa vieja. Colombians, they do carne desmechada. And then the Venezuelans do pabellon. Same thing in the same exact plate. You know, and then the pulled beef, you know, and the pulled pork, they really, really, you know, transfer into what Americans like. So, and he did a very good recipe of it. And then the pulled pork is from Puerto Rico, right? And
the pernil.
The pernil. And then I think that's the ropa vieja has been favorite just because of how long it takes to cook it. It is slowly cooked throughout the night. And then it's really, really, all the flavors are like inside the meat. It's really good. Yeah.
I've been in the kitchen for over 20 years in the back, so the front of the house for me now is just like amazing. Getting to talk to the customers, seeing their expressions on their faces, them just complimenting the food, it's amazing.
Well, and for me, it's totally the opposite. I was in the front with the customers. I was the one talking to the customers all the time. And then now being in the kitchen, cooking, I just totally love it. I love it. I love the smells. I love the thrill of having all those tickets to cook and all the orders coming in, and everything happens in 2 hours, and you have to rush. I totally love it. And then hearing the customers how much they like the food is also very important. And then every once in a while, we come out here, and I will explain. If I have time, we come here, and if it's a new customer especially, we explain everything from how we eat it, where we got it from, what's in it, you know, and making friends. I mean, we've made so many friends at this restaurant. It is, and we have customers that come here from when we open. Like our first customers, they still come here, and they're very proud to be our first
7 years later.
7 years later.
Sofrito is open for lunch and dinner Monday through Friday. Find them on Skeet Club Road just past Highway 68. Did you know that the pressure washer is the most requested tool to borrow from the neighborhood toolbox? Did you even know there's a neighborhood toolbox where you can borrow tools to use on your house or on your lawn for free? Larry, how did this program get started?
Well, technically, the program got born out of need, especially around the community with people who couldn't quite get their yards mowed or the maintenance that's required to keep your yard in compliance with the City of Greensboro.
And so someone came up with the idea, well, if we have tools to lend, then that can be less of a problem. We can make these accessible to everybody.
Yes, our director, Michelle Kennedy, wanted to promote a program where we could offer tools to help the community. So with that being said, the Neighborhood Toolbox program was born. We kind of did a quite a bit of community engagement with community watch groups, HOA, to kind of put this out there to let them know there is a place to be able to get help.
So this started in 2023, summer of 2023 basically, and about how many people used it?
Roughly right around 300 people last year. Wow. We're anticipating a little more this year.
Right, so a little earlier start this year and get the word out, and what kinds of things are you lending?
Our most popular ones are pressure washers, lawnmowers, and weed eaters, but as you can see, we have shovels, rakes, vacuums, anything that you need to keep your house in order.
What do you like about this program?
That it's free. You just stop by, tell us what you need. If we got it, we're going to let you borrow it for a week, and you can bring it right back to us.
It's a pretty good deal. I like free. Do you like free?
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mark, how does the program actually work in practice?
Well, the way this works, if a customer would like to borrow something that we have, they can go on to the city's website and go to the toolbox page. They can find a list of the tools that we do have. They can also click on a link where they can fill out an application if they see something that they'd like to borrow. Just a few questions, and then what tool they want to borrow, what particular day they'd like to pick it up and bring it back. And then one of our staff members will call them, make arrangements, and tell them what day and time that they can show up and just pick it up.
It sounds like a pretty simple process. How's it worked so far? Did it go pretty well last year?
It is a pretty simple process, and we had a pretty good response. We were really pleased with the response. In fact, we had between 200 and 300 applicants last year. We couldn't help everyone. Certainly, pressure washers are high in demand. We only have so many, right. So that's a little difficult. But we were talking to another program in Texas, and they said the first year they only had 100.
Oh, wow.
So I think we did really well.
And so I know people are thinking, did the tools actually come back? And did they come back in working condition?
For the most part, yes. We had a couple of incidents, but nothing that can't be corrected.
Yeah, and stuff happens. Things break down and need repair and need a little love every now and then, that's for sure. What do people tell you, customer or neighbors, when they are able to check out this equipment and use it and, get their lawn and fix something around their house?
It ranges from disbelief. I can do this for free? Right. It doesn't cost me anything? Mm-hmm. No, that's just what it's here for. And then a lot of gratitude. I wouldn't be able to do this if I didn't have this option. This really has made a difference for me. When someone's lawnmower breaks and they may not have the money to have it fixed right away, but they want to maintain their lawn, for instance, it's there for them. Or if they don't want to buy a pressure washer, they only need it once, there it is.
How would you like to see this program grow?
Well, I'd like to see it expand as far as the list of tools that we have available. What we have now is pretty basic, but I'd like to see what we have grow, and ultimately it would be nice to have brick and mortar, just a fixed location where we have a place where people come inside, a place for us to do maintenance. That would be nice.
How does it make you feel to be a part of this program?
I've really enjoyed it. I've been in code enforcement for about 20 years. And it's been frustrating when you find a customer who doesn't have access to something and you wish that you could not just serve the notice of violation, hey, your grass is really tall, you have to do something, but if they don't have the money to do it, it's nice to have that option.
You're offering solutions.
Trying. Mm-hmm. That feels really good.
Want to find out more or check out a tool? Go to greensboro-nc.gov/toolbox.
So Leave the Leaves is our new initiative that we're running. It's our Greensboro's Sustainable Landscapes project. And so this is what we're trying to push and trying to make it a seasonal effort for educational content to provide the residents of Greensboro more alternatives to just being more environmentally conscious. And see, there's a lot of change in the Office of Sustainability as we partner with other city departments and community partners. We're learning things that, with sustainability, how can we make sustainable change? And so learning and hearing from our stakeholders and residents, we're learning that policies and things may need to be changed. So with this new program, we're trying to provide residents better alternatives of, thinking more eco-friendly. How can you do things, that aligns with some of the policies that are changing in the city? I mean, change is not always bad. We definitely, invite and welcome feedback from our local residents and supporters and, people, but
I think just by trying and learning and going on our webpage to continue, following this program is not, a bad idea to just try to give it a chance.
Well, even this morning when I was driving in here, there was a story on NPR about the decline of insect populations, and many insects that we have in the Piedmont overwinter in the leaf litter. 100 years ago, or probably even less, this neighborhood was all a forest, and there would have been leaf litter on the ground, and things that live in these trees and eat these leaves fall in the ground, and then they overwinter in the leaf litter on the ground. And that's an important part of the life cycle of insects, and insects are the basis of the life cycle of birds and small mammals and everything else that eats small insects. Insects are a vital component of life on Earth. They break down organic matter. Like most of these leaves, even if they're a big pile this time of year where people have problems with them, in a month when they've been rained on a few times, maybe in 2 months when they've been snowed on, a knee-deep pile of leaves turns into an ankle-deep pile of leaves, and then there's things that are living in there eating them and breaking them down, recycling the nutrients back into the trees. So, they're also, if you want to have bluebirds in your yard, you can't put up a bluebird box. Each baby bluebird needs somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 caterpillars to fledge to an adult. So you need to have a lot of caterpillars. There needs to be a lot of insects around for most baby birds, all baby birds, to be fledged to adults. Even birds like cardinals that eat seeds as adults, their babies can't eat seeds. Their babies have to eat little tiny insects. So we've got ground-dwelling insects that birds find in the ground. We've got ones in the trees. So insects are a very important part, aside from pollinating our food crops, providing all of the benefits that we have from insects, that those of us who are ecologists that like to see moths and like to see butterflies. There's all sorts of environmental services that insects provide that we don't appreciate, most of which is litter management and controlling of biomass and dead things. So, if we didn't have insects, we'd be knee-deep in dead bodies of dead animals that didn't ever rot and get cleaned up. Those kinds of things are things that insects do. The other thing that's important is leaving the leaves on the ground is important for the trees, because the trees are not used to lawn as their cover of their roots. So we'd like to leave leaves on the ground in order to recycle the nutrients back to the trees. Lawns are not a problem if you're using them. I've played croquet, I've played golf, in places where lawns are appropriate, they're appropriate. But most people's lawns are more for show and not very ecologically beneficial. In the world of native plants, lawns are ecologically a bad idea, watershed a bad idea, small engines that you use, not the electric ones, but small gas engines are terrible for air quality and other things. So lawns are just, in general, a bad idea landscaping-wise. In the Native Plant Society, we'd like to promote people planting with native plants. So we have produced booklets for the coastal plain, the mountains, and the Piedmont about native plants. And the idea is, if everybody in North America would give up a third of their lawn and convert it to native plants, that would be a big help for Mother Nature and the natural resources. It would also be a place for people to plant more native plants in their areas where they've put their leaves, which makes it much more of a place for Mother Nature to do what Mother Nature needs to get done.
Yes, so we moved into this neighborhood in 1993, and prior to that, our children had come home with things that, Mom, you should recycle, you need to be sustainable, you need to take care of the environment. So we started looking into all of it, and actually we had done it in our old house, but what we did was we started, when we mow, we mulch with just a little, ours is a little electric mower, does great. The excess leaves we put around our bushes for the winter, and we have an actually lush lawn in the summer. We rarely have to fertilize or aerate or anything. It seems like the leaves disintegrate after we mulch them and they kind of fertilize. So we've actually enjoyed doing it because we feel like we're giving a little back to Mother Nature. And, you know, as Dr. Bridle was saying earlier, you know, we need to, you know, be able to have caterpillars live. We need to be able to have insects live, all the little animals. Of course, we don't want a lot of the insects that we don't like, but most of those, like mosquitoes, are born in water. So as long as you keep the water down, then you should be okay on that. About 10 years ago, several of us on council were approached by a group of citizens who said that they were tired of seeing leaves in the streets and that it was hard to navigate down their narrow streets because the leaves were covering the whole street. Well, then we started talking to some neighborhood associations. Then over the years, we brought up the idea several times. We didn't get much traction then, so we kind of let it lay low for a little while. And just a couple of years ago, we brought it up again because actually one of our public safety vehicles had trouble navigating down a road because people were parking where they shouldn't park because the leaves were on the edges and you can't park on the leaves. So after that, I started looking at it as a public safety issue as well. So looking at it that way, I went around and we started recording where the leaves were actually in the middle of the streets. And after a hard rain, those are almost impossible to get up. They're like glue. And also about our storm drains because we were paying a lot of money to unclog storm drains. So looking at all those factors, it was basically, you know, we really need to do something new. So staff was directed in work sessions. We talked about it work session last April. It was printed in several publications. So staff started looking at some various ways that we could take care of the leaves not being in the streets. They came back with several proposals. We had work sessions on that. The one proposal that seemed to be most well liked by the neighborhood groups that we talked to was the one where we would have the bin very similar to the other bins, and that way it could be picked up manually. Right now, when there are leaves in the streets and it rains and then it freezes, it is almost impossible for those crews to pick it up. I've been around on those routes, I've watched them, and we've had a lot of workmen's compensation claims because when you're picking up frozen leaves, then you have an issue where not only is it dangerous, it's also very heavy. So we've had a lot of yard waste issues too. So the bin, and then people can use the biodegradable bags, which do last up to 10 days when they are full and rained on. So we are hoping that our residents will at least see how this works for them. Is it going to work for everybody? No, but I don't even think leaf pickup has worked for everybody. And we have gotten so many complaints about hire some more people, hire some more vacuum trucks, buy some more vacuum trucks, do all of these things and you will have no problem. That's not quite true because during leaf season, we have to pull, this year we've pulled 31 employees from other departments and hired temp and pulled all of the people that are doing other things just to do our leaf pickups. So all of these things, you know, that's one reason we've done it for so many years. In 30 years, I have never put a leaf in the street. You know, I am very excited that this is something that we can do to make our city more sustainable. This is what it's all about. We need to find ways, not only can we have our nice lawn, but we also need to find ways to help the environment be sustainable, help our employees from getting hurt, you know, not having to hire as many employees because most of it will be automated. All of those things, I'm just so excited. I commend Dr. Shree Doristant. She was so excited about it. Community Sustainability Council so excited about it. You know, Greensboro is known for its trees. I know this. And I've had some people kind of attack me and say they're just going to cut down all their trees. I sure hope they don't do that because I really believe that this is something that we can work with. If there are issues, we are accessible. The departments are accessible. If someone needs some assistance and is disabled or elderly and cannot, we have a program where someone will come and pick up your bins. There's so many things that the city does that I think it gets criticized for, and especially when we try to evolve into something different. So is this going to be something that everybody will be praising? Probably not, but I'm okay with that. I think in order to save our environment, we really, really need to try it.
open session? So moved.
Second.
Move to adjourn. Moved by Mrs. Thurm, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, opposed? That passes unanimously. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, so moved.
Second. Moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Mrs. Hightower. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.